We're going to do our first example of dividing polynomials using the long division algorithm. I'm going to take a look at my divisor and set it up, and I'm going to make sure I write my divisor correctly. I'm going to make sure that I write my dividend correctly. I'm going to take a look at my degrees first. 4, 3, 2, 1, and then 0. So we can see that my polynomial is in descending order of degree, which is great. So I'm just going to write that down here. So I believe I have it all set up, and I'm just going to make sure I've checked everything and wrote down the question correctly, because in fact I've wrote down the question incorrectly, and I spent about 10 minutes doing the wrong question. So let us begin. So we begin by asking ourselves not how many times does x minus 2 go into this, but rather we take a different view. How many times does x go into x to the power of 4? Now, don't answer that question. Change it around so it becomes easier. X times what is x to the power of 4? Well, that's x to the power of 3. Now, on my way down, when I multiply on my way down, like we do in the long division algorithm with numbers, I am going to multiply x to the power of 3 by my binomial. And I'm going to have to subtract this and subtract this quantity. I'm going to put that binomial in brackets. X to the power of 3 times x minus 2 is x to the power of 4 minus 2x cubed. Now, I'm not that great at subtracting binomials, and it kind of gets tricky. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add the negatives. And what we can see is this is going to be 0, and this is going to be 0. So I'm going to put 0x cubed. And then carry down my x squared. Now, x, it's only the first term that we ask ourselves, x times what gives me x, or 0x cubed? Well, that would be 0x squared. Now, 0x squared times my whole divisor. And remember, 0x squared is just really 0. And what we get there is 0x cubed minus 0x squared. And I'm going to subtract this quantity. And I'm going to add the negatives, so I'm left with negative x squared. I'm going to carry down that positive 7x. Now, everything looks good so far. Now I'm going to ask myself, x times what will give me negative x squared? Well, that's negative x. Well, negative x multiplied by my entire divisor, well, that will give me negative x squared plus 2x. Just like regular division, I have to subtract this amount. I'm going to add the negative instead of subtracting because it makes my life a little bit easier. And this will be 5x. That would be 0. 7x plus negative 2x is going to be 5x. And then I'm going to carry down that minus 4. X times what will give me 5x? Well, that's 5. 5 times x minus 2 will be 5x plus 10. And then I'm going to hold on, I lost my train of thought there. Five times x minus 2 will give me 5x minus 10. Remember to subtract this quantity, and I'm terrible at subtracting, so I'm just going to add the negatives. And what we see here is that the x's cancel out, and I'm left with a remainder of 6. So there I have it. Now, wouldn't it be interesting to know that I actually know a shortcut method to do this? So I'm just going to check. Well, I'm actually done the hardest part of the question now. Great. So I did it correctly. Now, what you just seen is something called synthetic division. And we'll get back to that a little bit later on. Let's do the next example here. Now, I'm going to set up my divisor, and my divisor is x minus 1. But I notice that my dividend is a little bit crazy. My dividend is x plus x to the power 3 minus 7. What I notice is that the polynomial is out of order in terms of its degree. So I'm just going to reorder that. Also, what I notice is that there is a missing x squared term. So we have x to the power 3, x to the power of 1, x to the power 0. So I'm just going to add that x squared term. And I can do that by adding 0x squared, and it doesn't change the value. So that's what my dividend looks like. There we have it, feeling good. All right. And now I'm going to take a look at this. Here's my divisor. X times what gives me x cubed? Well, that's x squared. Now, x squared multiplied by my entire binomial on the way down will give me x cubed plus x squared. Make sure you subtract this quantity. However, I'm terrible at subtracting, so I'm going to add the negative. I carry down the next term, which is x. X times what gives me negative x squared? Well, that's negative x. Negative x times x plus 1, the whole divisor, will give me negative x squared minus x. Now, remember that you have to subtract this quantity. And this is something that I do. I'm terrible at subtracting those two quantities, so I'm just going to add the negative. So the x squares add up to 0, and x plus x will give me 2x. I carry down the negative 7, so x times 2x, x times what gives me 2x? And that's 2. 2 times x plus 1 will give me 2x plus 2, I believe. So remember, you have to subtract this quantity. I'm terrible at subtracting, so I'm going to add the negative. That's going to yield 0, and this will yield negative 9. So I have a remainder of negative 9. Now, if I choose to do synthetic division, this will represent my divisor. And it's not a mistake that my divisor was x minus 1, x plus 1. So I'm just going to put negative 1 there. And then, what do these numbers all represent? Well, these numbers all represent just simply the coefficients. And I add down, multiply across, add down, 0 plus negative 1 is negative 1, multiply across, negative 1 times negative 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. There we have it. And somehow, negative 1 is represented, somehow these numbers are represented in my answer.